Have you ever felt like landlord clients sometimes might be worse than tenant clients? As a property manager, I'm pretty sure we all had the experiences where the landlords contact us at 8 or 9 p.m. saying that they made a certain arrangement for the next day and they needed us to be there with such a short notice. And that type of situation is very frustrating because it just feels like our time is not being respected. In today's videos, I'm going to show you 7 things that we do constantly to enforce the policy and rule so that the landlords don't disrespect our time over and over again. And the last one is my non-negotiable. You'll make your entire property management business operation so much easier. Let's dive right into this. So the very first one is that your landlord clients don't have access to you after, let's say, 7 p.m. You need to have some flexibility, but you definitely need to establish your operating hours. Because in this business, we're already standby for the emergency repairs. We shouldn't be standby for everybody else. Otherwise, there's no rest time for you and your team. And this rule needs to be clearly communicated in the very beginning. It needs to be established. Otherwise, your time is not going to be respected. They feel like they're paying a monthly management fee and they have access to you any given time. That's just not the way to operate a business.
Stop calling me!
And if you really think about it, most of the stuff that landlord requested with rental owner statement, the charges, and maybe the coordination, this can all wait until the next morning. So you need to establish a process where the communication come in and you'll see in your inbox for you to review in the morning. And that's a boundary that you need to draw in the very beginning, and it needs to be written somewhere to reinforce that behavior over and over again. Number 2 is that you need to make sure your tenants are only communicating with you, not communicating with both you and your landlord clients. Here's what happened to me when I first started property management business. I was being very nice. I want to kind of tailor to the landlord's needs. And what ended up happening is that the tenants are both communicating with me and the landlords. And slowly, I noticed one thing that happened is that every time that I need to stop something, for example, tenants might say, hey, can I get some upgrades? Can I do some painting on certain things? Can I get my brother to also live with me? You know, those type of situations where we have to establish the boundary and rules with the tenants. And whenever they get rejected with their request, they will bypass me and try to communicate with the owners. And this is where things started getting very, very complicated because the landlords also might have a different expectation. Now they have a bit of buffer, they have some mental space. They sometimes will just say yes to get rid of the problem. And that kind of response from landlords end up backfiring at us as a property manager because there's no more rules and regulation that can be enforced anymore. So we shouldn't be co-managing the properties with the owners. It's very simple. Make sure the communication channel is only to you and not to others. And make sure that whenever there's any request, it needs to be approved by the owner through us. And also think about it, you're paying clients, your landlords pays you a monthly management fee to create that buffer. If this kind of request keep bypassing to them, at a certain point, your landlord clients will also feel like, what am I paying you for? I keep stepping in to deal with those type of requests. I'm not trying to manage the properties, and therefore, you're probably not managing my properties correctly. These are all the expectations that needs to be set in the very beginning. If there's any landlords that still wants to maintain the certain communication with the tenants, you gotta cut that out right away. It's really going to backfire at you literally in month 3 or 4. Happens all the time. Number 3 is how you handle the emergency repairs with your landlords. A lot of times when there's an emergency happens, we're waiting for landlords to approve certain repairs. And if they're not available, or if they're busy, or if they're facing a bit of financial situation, they end up being able to pick what they want to do or what they want to address, which is not a good position for us either. Because as a property manager, we also take on certain liability managing other people's rental properties. So I always want to make sure emergency repairs needs to be defined very clearly in the very beginning. Anything to do with the heating, water, and obviously anything to do with safety, such as break-in, lockout, all that stuff. These are all considered as emergency repairs, and there's no negotiation on whether or not the landlords wants to fix it. Okay, we have to do it. There's no discussion about it. As long as the landlords will want to kind of step in, save some money, this is a time where we need to actually clearly define what emergency, how we're addressing it, and at what thresholds that we need to wait for the landlord's approval. So let me give you an example. If the roof has a bit of damage and then leaks started coming in, that's water damage, and we need to address it immediately. So what we normally would do is that we wouldn't actually get the roof replacement because that's a very high cost, and that repair can actually wait. So our SOP to address that specific issue is that we're going to actually be doing the patchwork so that it stops the leaks coming in. And that work, we're not asking for any approval from the landlords. We're gonna just do it. Make sure there's no further damage to the property because again, it'll cost the landlords more money and they're gonna get upset. So we're gonna just do it. And then after that's done, and we're gonna get approval on maybe 2 or 3 quotes on the roof replacement. So that's a typical workflow that we have. Landlords have no say during the emergency process. We, as a property manager, has a certain obligation and responsibility to the tenants, and to our own company. And they need to agree to this policy from the get-go. And that leads to number 4. How do we select vendors? Landlords, typically, before they hand off the management to you, they're probably working with some vendors themselves, more like their preferred vendors. So initially, we want to establish what they actually do. If they have a very close relationship with certain preferred vendors, no problem, we can look into who they're working with. We can use them as all preferred vendors as well. But the issue here is that we don't want to be selecting vendors all the time with the landlords. Okay, most of the time when the landlords are not dealing with tenants on a regular basis, their response time will definitely drop because their attention is no longer there. And this is where I'm not trying to get into the position where I have to decide on the vendors together with the landlords and slow down my process. I'm the one who's going to be dealing with the backfire. So let me just make a decision. And if the landlords have any issue with that, we can always review it. But typically with the volume work that we're providing for local vendors, we're always going to get a more reliable vendors and also with better pricing. There's just no way to beat that. Even though sometimes the landlords might say, hey, I have a guy who can do it cheaper, but it actually doesn't mean that they can do a better job. And another thing is that as an owner, I always want to make sure I control the schedule for the entire team. I don't want another person to come in here as a manager to point out exactly what we need to do and alter the procedure for them. So definitely make sure the vendor selection is done by you. They can suggest a couple and we can consider and we can test them out. But the moment that it falls outside of our SOP, timeline schedules don't match, we use our vendors right away. So next time, if your landlord client is trying to interfere with your process, just tell them that, hey, you hired us to do our job. Let us do our job. Stop that behavior or reinforce the right behavior so that your team can actually handle the work correctly going forward. Number 5, since we're the party to receive the rent payment, a lot of landlords will also say, hey, listen, cover that for me or pay it out, and then when the rent comes in here, you can just deduct from it. They're basically using you as a 0% lender in this situation.
Pay your bills.
Is there rental properties? We really shouldn't be covering anything for them. So there are 2 ways that I solve this issue. Number 1 is that I need to have a property reserve for your property. This could be a $500 reserve for a single family home. If it's a multi-family, typically we charge $750 to $1,000. Basically have that money sitting in the trust account. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it's your own property. If there's any repairs or any emergency, I'm not paying out of my pocket. You're essentially using that slush funds to handle the necessary operational costs. Okay, and when the rent comes in here, you can top that up again. And also be very specific that property reserve is only being used for maintenance stuff. A lot of landlords sometimes will also push the property tax utility bills back to you. And sometimes they fell behind so much that one bill is $2,000, $3,000. We're not doing that. And in order for us to do that, we have to kind of increase the property reserve, wait until the rent comes in here, then we can clear out. Another way that I'm trying to make sure that this type of task is not being pushed to our team is that I just started adding more and more pricing into each task that I need to handle. If we need to handle the property tax, guess what? We're not just gonna do it. We're gonna charge a fee to handle the bills. Because there's a lot of coordination that we still need to do. Utility bills, insurance bills, and all that stuff, right? The moment that everything gets to us, now this is an asset management company. It's no longer a property management company. So we have additional fees structured in the very beginning to let the landlords know that you're still the landlords, you still own the asset, and you're going to be managing the assets from the high level. And those type of tasks will not be handled by property management or additional fee will apply. This is honestly the easiest way to make sure that you're not becoming a 0% lender for all of your clients. Number 6, make the listing for sale part of your agreement. Okay, if you're onboarding any property management clients, it's because they're having trouble managing their property. At some point, they might also want to sell their property. I never want to co-manage the property with other people. The moment that there's another realtor, another broker who has no idea about this rental properties or the history of this property or a tenant relationship, is always going to make your life a lot harder. Okay, trust me on that. I've gone through so many different listings where I had to be dealing with other realtors. And the only way to make it worth it is either your management fee needs to go up or you just need to make for sale as part of the property management agreement. At the end of the day, the landlord just wants to get the property sold for the right price. You as a property manager knows exactly what happened to this property for the past several months or even years. You need to be the one who's communicating that with the new buyer. And from the landlord's point of view, they just need to know that it's listed on MLS, okay, it's properly advertised. A lot of times they don't care who's listing the property. Okay, so if you make that a mandatory thing in your property management agreement, probably 70-80% of the time, you're going to get that listing right away. So make sure you don't leave that money on the table. And if you ever come to a situation where the landlords definitely have the preferred realtors due to the relationship and all that stuff, no problem, you can still be flexible, but just make sure you increase your property management fee to facilitate the entire things. And by the way, in 2019, I literally netted 200K just making it mandatory for me to be listing the properties for all the PM clients. You should definitely do it. don't overthink about this part. And the very last one is that sometimes landlords will be concerned or questioning about how to establish the accountability for property manager. They still want to feel like they're managing the property manager. So that's how they're interfering in the process, is because they're concerned about losing control. So in order for you to have that kind of relationship with the owners, you just need to let them know that, listen, judge me based on the process that we outline right now, right here. If there's a certain things I say to you that I'm going to do, I didn't end up doing it. But for the process that we establish for our management clients and management team, is something that you have to also follow. Again, you hire us to manage the property, manage the portfolio, protect your portfolio, so you can focus on being the investors and stay passive. So let us do our things. Don't try to do it halfway. So judge us based on the process and the workflow that we establish, and see if we're doing things that we say we're going to do. And this is the best way to establish trust and accountability between you and your landlord clients. And make sure you keep updating your property management agreement every 6 months or every 12 months, so that you can keep simplifying your property management operation over time. If you find this video helpful, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you want to know exactly how I outline my property management agreement, give this video a watch.